Ted Hicks from Late Night Parents. Ways to follow the show is latenightparents.com. Question for the topic of the day is, are Uber and Lyft doomed? Autonomous vehicles are about to dramatically change the world of our on-demand car services. Kind of similar to when ride-sharing services shook up the taxi industry. Viewed through that lens, Uber and Lyft's current business models are doomed to fail. So think about this. Big IPOs. Uber and Lyft, the two biggest US-based on-demand car service companies, went public this year. Uber posted a $1 billion loss on revenue of $3.1 billion. That loss was in line with the company's forecast, as Uber called 2019 an investment year. Uber reported that costs were up 35% in the quarter, and due in large part to the ramp up to the IPO, but noted that gross booking, total value of rides before expenses, were up 34% year over year. Lyft posted quarterly losses of more than $1 billion, as it found itself similar to Uber in its most money-losing year yet. Lyft reported a loss of $1.4 billion compared to the loss of $234 million in the same quarter last year, primarily due to the $894 million charge for stock-based compensation. Revenue was up 95% to $760 million. In both cases, the market seemed to have priced the expected losses into the share prices. The theoretical economics of autonomous vehicles. In theory, it costs approximately $2 per mile to put a human driver behind the wheel of a car service. This number varies depending on a known number of variables, such as the driver's commission structure, price of insurance, time the driver is willing to spend driving, density of the population in the covered areas, average length of a ride, prevailing competition landscape, and other factors. In theory, it will cost approximately 30 cents per mile to have an autonomous vehicle do the same job. These financial assumptions are generally espoused at conferences and summits by pundits and experts in the automotive industry. We've taken an average, and I mean per mile, to autonomous vehicle cost per mile will be very large. The actual number won't matter for this argument. At first glance, an extra $1.70 per mile seems irresistible. An 85% uptick in gross profit would get anyone's attention. But there is more to the story. The on-demand cliche. How many times have you heard someone say something like, the world's largest taxi firm, Uber, owns no cars. The world's most popular media company, Facebook, creates no content. The world's most valuable retailer, Alibaba, carries no stock. And the world's largest accommodation provider, Airbnb, owns no property. Meta services like those mentioned take advantage of the inefficiencies in existing marketplaces. Uber's first mission was to utilize the time black car drivers wasted waiting for a fare. Uber priced the service between yellow cabs and black cars, and it worked well. Uber needed more drivers, so invented a supply chain. Today, if you have a car and a commercial driver's license, you can prove you are not an axe murderer, you can become an Uber driver. Both Lyft and Uber pivoted, and their business models have significantly changed. Meta service versus fleet ownership. The future of on-demand car services is said to include fleets of autonomous vehicles. You can choose your own timeline. My guess, which will be as bad as yours, is more than 3 years and less than 10. So let's assume that Uber and Lyft have become the de facto ways to get from place to place in certain areas, and the companies need to purchase or lease 200,000 autonomous vehicles to augment their human-driven fleets. Again, choose any large number of autonomous vehicles. It won't matter for this argument. Owning a car is quite different from paying for a percentage of someone's time because that person has a car and chooses to drive it for you. When you own the car, you are responsible for fuel, insurance, maintenance, loans, or lease payments, storage when not in use, parking, charging, etc., and the list goes on and on. All of a sudden, an on-demand car service transforms from a meta service profiting from inefficiencies in the marketplace to a good old-fashioned rental car fleet and some software that makes short-term point-to-point rentals and on-demand rides possible. If you want to understand the economics of owning a fleet of vehicles, you don't have to work very hard. It's a mature business, and no publicly traded fleet owner is enjoying valuations that are anything like the 8 times plus multiple on revenue. Strategies for the future. There's a lot to love about on-demand car service. I love Uber and Lyft. I use them multiple times a day. Well, per se, not me, but my family members do. The services are outstanding. You rate the drivers rate you, the cars are clean, most drivers use Waze, so directions are not an issue. That said, I'm not sure how long it can last. The prices are artificially low because in certain markets, there are subsidized price wars. There is zero loyalty because the services are completely undifferentiated. If Uber says 14 minutes and Lyft says 5 minutes, you cancel Uber and you go with Lyft. If Lyft turns out to really say 12 minutes, you open Uber and check again, and on and on. Any car you get is likely to have both a Lyft and an Uber sticker in the window, which is the definition of undifferentiated. So future strategies will have to include all kinds of other on-demand services or some as yet undefined strategic direction. Or perhaps something different will happen. So here's my best guess. I think Uber and Lyft will get acquired or simply replaced by Big Auto, BMW, Ford, or GM, for example. And here's why. Big Auto already has a nationwide dealer network to store and maintain a massive fleet of autonomous vehicles. There are car dealerships in every town in America. Big Auto manufactures the vehicles, the ride-sharing and or on-demand vehicles, short-term rentals, is actually a great way to maximize the profit on any particular vehicle. Why sell it once at the lowest price possible through a two-step distribution model when you can rent it over and over again at a profit? For Uber and Lyft to accomplish the same thing, they would have to pay the full markup on the purchase. Big Auto knows how to sell fleet vehicles. Uber and Lyft would get a discount for volume, but nothing like the margins Big Auto could accomplish for itself. Then the on-demand car service are going to have to acquire the infrastructure to store and maintain vehicles. Where will that money come from? I just don't see Uber and Lyft transforming from meta services to fleet owners in a profitable way. But the path for Big Auto seems clear. When will this happen? We don't know. But the current business models for Uber and Lyft are probably not sustainable. Funding their autonomous vehicle evolution looks even less likely. On the other hand, perhaps Uber or Lyft will purchase one of the big auto manufacturers. That would take the word disruption to another level entirely. This is Ted Hicks from Late Night Parents. I'm not sure if you caught it on the newswire. With Netflix is scheduled to build 6 sound stages in New York and invest $100 million into locations in Brooklyn and Manhattan. This is totally the opposite of what Amazon was planning to do in Queens. With Netflix, it's only going to add 127 jobs, but it gives them over 100,000 square feet.
It gives them real estate in New York City.
Yeah, and in Brooklyn, they're going to lease 161,000 square feet for sound stages, and Bushwick, it's going to collect up to $4 million in state tax credits if it meets the job target within 5 years and maintains them for another 5. Good move for Netflix, bad move, indifferent. How do you feel about that?
I don't see how this is a bad move for Netflix. They get to essentially get, I don't know, man. First of all, you have the Brooklyn Yards there, right? So, and not just that. What's the studio? They just built I want to say Shoehorn Studios or something like that. It's named Studios, but it's out on Long Island. And so there are 2 studios in New York already. One films a lot with Law and Order.
Yeah.
Silver,
and there's one, I
Silver
think,
Cup
in
Studios
Suffolk County or something like that.
I want to say Silver Cup. And there's one in Suffolk County?
Yeah, I think there's one in Suffolk County. You see the later part, it's eastern Long Island, so it might be towards the tail end of Nassau going into Suffolk. But I could be wrong.
Yeah, Silver Cup Studios is in Long Island, right? So you have these studios that are popping up because remember, people love to film in New York, but New York charges all this cash, so people stop coming here. They go to Vancouver instead, and New York was losing all this stuff, and then it became this niche thing to have your show filmed here, right? So it was Law and Order, and it was, I think it was, that's the only one I can come up with. But all these other shows were set in New York and filmed in L.A. or like Friends, for example, very famous, right? Supposed to be in Manhattan, shot in. So New York wants some of this money back. I mean, it's $1 billion industry after all, but there's no place, there's no space. So what do? I guess you give land to these people. I mean, isn't there the West Yards in Manhattan that they were trying to build a studio there as well?
I believe so.
It used to be, yeah. So I mean, you want to make sure you don't give away the shop. I mean, New York doesn't need a film industry. It's got so much else going on for it. And the film industry can only benefit from being in New York, right? So that's a lot of space. I don't know. I think that you know what? I'm sort of a fan of Netflix, so I don't want to give Netflix a hard time. But I see your point. Yeah, no, I mean it's make believe. You don't really have to make believe in New York in a place where they want to let you live in an apartment as big as a closet for $3,000, but then they want to give away about 1 million miles of square space, for pennies to billionaire companies. It doesn't make any sense.
I just think it's the same old story.
Yeah, it sounds like the same old story.
I think it's the same old story. I like the fact that Netflix is doing this. I like the fact that they're going to have an imprint because, outside of the corporate building out in the West,
right.
They're basically a website.
Yeah,
which has
right.
tons of content.
Right. I mean, you can at least go and see to Paramount Studio and MGM and see what they built over the last 100 years. If I wanted to go see a Netflix studio, yeah, I wouldn't. I'd have a problem.
I think it's a big move for them because, A, they're already in the discussions with Emmys every year with them. It's always Netflix and HBO neck and neck.
Right.
On, and now with them getting into, the Academy, into that conversation, and with them producing movies and, I just think with Netflix, the legacy theaters, this is the beginning of the end. Of course, we're a few days out from Endgame dropping. But right. There's only movies like Endgame, they don't drop every day. They don't drop every day. And I just think the movie industry, not the industry as a whole with making movies, I'm talking about the movie theater industry.
Like, all right.
It's
Regal and right.
Yes, AMC and Lowe's, like it's dying a slow death.
Yeah,
because you got all of us, and you have the wonderful millennials that we love to talk about that have it at the they have it at the remote, they have it at the it's right there at their fingertips. Where I could pull this movie up and boom, it's in the movie theaters right now, and I'm gonna watch it right now here.
Yeah, in my pajamas. I don't gotta look for parking or get out of the house.
Right.
Yeah. Why would I stress? We ain't gotta get all dressed up. We can call.
But you wonder what type of society do we continue to push forward with that? Because you got the kids that are sitting there gaming, and it was so funny because I was talking with one of my friends earlier, and we were talking about there's no kids on the street. You remember when we were growing up, we were out on the street every day playing football.
Go outside and play.
Playing wiffle ball, handball, you name it. Skelly. These kids, the streets are barren. There's no kids on the streets.
Yeah.
It leads you to believe that, wait, are there like no kids in my neighborhood? And you're like, no, there are. It's just they're not outside. They're not, that interaction doesn't exist.
It's Xbox.
It's
PC. I game on an Xbox, I game on a PC. But at the same time, when I was that age, we had Atari and Commodore 64. But we still went out and played, I think people have told people that, the outside is dangerous, and that was part of it, right?
But rightfully so, it is dangerous, but is it any more dangerous than it was 30 years ago?
No, and it's not that dangerous.
40 years ago?
Sadly, you have to take your lumps. And the media pushes danger on the society, right? And the society, they make it sound like this is Iraq. Like not even 1 in 10 kids will end up murdered. It's like 1 in 100,000 or something crazy like this. But there's so much violence on television and in music, and everybody's wants to be the man. But if you got to be the man, someone's trying to always take your crown, quote unquote crown, right? So now you always have a villain, an enemy. So it's this mindset that you're always walking through the world with, whether you realize it or not, that you're always expecting to be confronted just because you're perpetually, fed this diet. And your allies, usually politics, fuel you, right? They are the ones who got your back versus your neighbor, the guy at the water cooler, like we were talking about earlier. And so you end up in this space where you think you become this paranoid being. Look at how ridiculous, the police are, right? The cops, there was an incident today. And the cop said, I was surrounded, and I thought I was going to be attacked, so I had to do it. And I'm like, the cops are always surrounded. The cops are never attacked and run over and you know what I mean? Like, the idea of impending disaster, you know, has been with America since at least the antebellum period of, you know, the blacks are going to come in and get revenge. It's always this thing. Let me protect you. Oh, you need a gun. Let me protect. Oh, something's going to happen. And people make a lot of money off of this vibe. And I tell people all the time, I had to tell my sister, I was like, let that boy go out and play. Nothing's going to happen to him. You know, nobody's going to kidnap you. What do you think? Of all the, like, if we had 100 kids in a school, every family has had a kidnapping in it? No, that's ridiculous. I mean, because, you know, one, moms worry, and rightfully so, but also people know that you worry so they can tap into it for money. Oh, get a, you know, some of it is good. You know, protect your family, get a nanny cam, get a doorbell cam, but some of it is ridiculous. You need 9 guns. Get this super see-in-the-dark flashlight that you can see from space, just in case the power goes out. I'm like, really? You live in New York. You know, if the power goes out, it won't be out for very long. You know, I remember one incident where it was out for, like a week because there was a fire. But generally, if the power blinks out, it's coming back. So someone's always telling you to be worried, to be panicky. Oh, they're coming. And that's not really the case. And generally, when somebody's coming for you, you know it. You know who you screwed over, you know. And sometimes, sadly, bad things happen to you. And you know, people run across bad people in the world. But that's, I don't want to say ultra rare because there's enough of it on your news. But the idea that we're 360 million and they essentially cherry-pick the bad news and make you this tension-riddled person. And you becoming a tension-riddled person means you worry more about your kids, and now you don't want your kids out. And then before you know it, your kids are eating the same bad fast food without the ability to climb a tree or run it off and get on your bike. You know what I mean? And so now, before you know it, you're just sort of a well-meaning person with a rich inner life who draws and reads and loves comic books like I do, but you didn't grow up with like a bunch of dudes to run around and play football and baseball and basketball and climb trees and ride down what was the name of that place? Devil's Hill?
Dead Man's
Curve. That was the name of that place. Was it Dead Man's Hill or Dead Man's Curve? But you know what I'm saying?
Hill.
Some
I
people remember how long we had to ride to get to that place?
Yes.
These modern kids will not take that ride, man.
They would lose their minds.
Yeah. We've been riding for at least a half an hour. Why haven't we? You know, it's like it's this idea of when it's sunny out, get your butt outside and go play in the sun. And when it's dark, you better be in the house at a certain time. And then you can play video games then. Now it's just as soon as I'm home, I'm on a video game controller, and you know I'm mildly overweight and I shouldn't be. And a lot of this can easily be, you know. And I get it. It's like I said, but you don't want to give it into such fear that. And some people we live in different neighborhoods too. I want to say that as well. So you know, I don't know. I just think that the kids really do need to be out in the sunshine and mucking about with each other without their mom or their dad directly in oversight of them. You know. Because they're going to do their own thing eventually.
I'm not saying oversight isn't good. Oversight is good, but a lot of times you need to go and take a look. Take a look, take a ride, go do what you know, we kind of sound like the old, cranky old guy.
Yeah, so that's a good question.
Get off my lawn.
Exactly. So knowing that kids are all different, right, and they grow up at different ages. They grow up in different stages, and kids are ready for when do you feel it's appropriate to stop looking in on your kid? Like, so you've got a 7-year-old and it's quiet. I fully expect you to go, why is it so quiet up there? And go and look in there, your 3-year-old, your 5-year-old, your 7-year-old. And I expect that if your 25-year-old is in the other room and he's quiet, you're not going to go check on them. So this is the thing. Somewhere in the space of parenting, all parents will have to be able to know when to stop checking on their kids, right? And so it's the idea of go outside and play. When we were kids, our parents had enough of our knowledge of what they taught us and our knowledge of our area and our social skills to know that we were not going to be a problem. So we could go out and not be missing, not get lost, not, get into all kind of mayhem and chaos, and then come back with broken fingers. They knew that, oh, what did you do today? Oh, we went to Dead Man's Curve, and we played some handball. Oh, so-and-so ran to his cousin at the mall, and then that was it. And that was our day. And your mom like, oh, wow, sound like you had a good day. You're like, yeah. This is what 12 and 13-year-old, this is the life of a kid back then. Now, other people cannot let their 12 and 13-year-olds out of the house like that, right? And I'm not talking about bad neighbors. I'm just talking about maybe there's a difference with that kid, or maybe, that kid has totally different interests. But the idea is socialization, talking to people, and even if you have an introverted kid, you make that kid go talk to people, because in the long run, it's better for them, And it's that. So I don't know. I mean, I see what you're saying, but at the same time, I don't know.
I agree with you.
Yeah,
I agree with you fully on it. It's just, I think, from our parents to where we became parents, we would cut from a different cloth.
Yeah.
It's like the way they did it, they were just efficient. Because, I mean, I look at myself all the time, and I'm like, I remember my dad would say something one time, and I'm like, okay.
Exactly.
Got it. He's not playing to where I'm saying with my son, I'm like, this is like the fourth time I've said this to you. What is wrong with you?
Yeah.
I'm like, come here. Is there anything, and I'm pointing towards his noggin, and I'm like, is there anything in there? Like, why am I saying this to you 3 and 4 times? I'm like, come on, man, you got to get it.
Yeah, I guess we do sound like it off my lawn. Yeah, I guess it's the young people.
You do.
Like, yeah, I don't know. Maybe this is a byproduct of a not lenient, of a more technologically affluent society. You know what I mean?
It is
more cerebral,
I agree with you.
So, because I think technology definitely has an effect on how you raise these kids. So, like, the communication is different, and the ways to communicate is different. I don't know. Because it's funny, because my nephew, he's very, I go through that with him. Like, my 10-year-old nephew, I'm just kind of like, I don't even understand it. But my nephew, who's 30, sort of gets it. So he's half as exasperated by my 10-year-old nephew as I am. And I feel like I'm half exasperating to other family members as my older family, you know what I mean? My older family members are. So it's God only knows, man. I mean, that's what family's for, right? We're all supposed to be different. Guess we're not all supposed to be crazy. So, yeah, I don't know.
Definitely. Man, I tell you this much. Got to get back with you. Hopefully during this week, record another pod, because I know we haven't talked a while, and we can talk technology, we can talk education, we can talk Common Core,
new math,
video games, the new math. We could talk Endgame. Next time let's talk about your expectations for Endgame, because I think it's setting us all up to be disappointed.
Wow. I think it has a couple of things to do here. Just to get into the conversation earlier, I think it has to wrap up the last 10 years nicely, but it also has to set up the next phase of these movies nicely, right? Didn't they sign her to Miss Marvel, Brie Larson? Didn't they sign her to 5 or 6 movies? So that's so they're expecting that character to do some big things. So, like, I think the wrap-up and the kickoff is going to be the trick. And it's like a Olympic dismount. They're going to have to nail it. When does that movie come out? Thursday? Friday?
Yeah. It's like
right. It's
less
close.
than 72 hours away or something like that.
Wow, really?
I'm going on Saturday to go see it.
I would like to see it Tuesday.
10 a.m. I'm going to be there.
You lucky. Maybe I get into the movie review game so I can get some of these cushy seats. Yeah.
Going there, and it's more lines of, like, at the movie theater around here.
Yeah.
We have two movie theaters over here, like by Roosevelt Field Mall. And so 2 movie theaters within a mile and a half of each other. The craziest thing you probably ever heard. One is showing it in 5 theaters. The other one is showing it in 4 theaters. So kind of makes you think, like, hey, you could have just put it all into one movie theater and just said, hey, we're showing Endgame around the clock.
Right.
But I think it's good because I think back to the days when we were all online waiting for Empire Strikes Back. The line was going down the block
and around the building at a multiplex. But the multiplex was only showing it in 1981. They were only showing the movie in 2 different theaters, and you're just like, and Sunrise, people who don't know Sunrise Cinemas, that multiplex had like 15, 20 movie theaters because it was built on an old drive-in, so it had nothing but space. So it had all that's a really good point. Why would there not have been like 6 showings for like Return of the Jedi in that movie theater? I guess no one had thought about it, and now the modern thing is, so what you say, it was in 5 theaters in your local, in one another?
5 in one, 4 in the other, total of 9. But I think also what comes into play, because you start to peel things back and you say, oh, they have X amount of licenses. You have to purchase X amount of licenses. Mm-hmm. So you got to think about it. Hey, to show this movie, hey, I'm going to purchase 2 licenses. It's going to cost X, Y, Z versus Endgame is that's a sure hit. So you can say, hey, we're going all in. We're going to go with 9 or 10 licenses to currently run it at X amount of dollars.
Right.
So it's I mean, I guess it's all about math, but back then they, of course, you're not as sophisticated.
Right.
30 years later, you're like, oh, this is what we don't want lines around the corner.
Right, because people will be unhappy.
Yeah, people be truthful. People are pissed. And people are just like, oh, this is the way this is done. Oh, this is no good.
At this point, the only people I ever see waiting on the line are Apple people. And Black Friday people. But other than that, I think that is it.
That is
I think in my daily life, the only lines I ever see are at fast food restaurants. I'm looking at you, McDonald's. There shouldn't be lines at your fast food restaurant. But, it's supposed to be fast food. Why am I waiting here for 10 minutes?
Dude, I went into McDonald's. This is the last thing I'll mention. Went into McDonald's, and they have kiosks now. So you don't have to go to the register anymore. I'm like,
I know, but don't you know that the kiosks are full of poo? Someone did a swab wipe on those kiosks, and there was like a germ quotient that I was like, nope.
Really?
And I'm one of these old guys, but I like human interaction. I can buy all this stuff online. I still go into shops and talk to people. So, and I rarely eat McDonald's, but I'm still addicted to the fries, I will say. And so, whenever I need like a sugar fix, I'll run in there and I never do the drive-thru. And I'll run in and I'll just end up waiting online and rereading the menu to see if I can come up with what's changed. But there's always a line.
I was just so shocked that there was a kiosk.
Yeah. And it's funny, if you can get stuff from the kiosk that you can't get from the counter. So you can you can get like a Big Mac, but with like minus the meat. It's weird. So you get the whole thing. Read that kiosk sometimes. Yeah, extra pickles. Yeah, it's you can get a veggie hamburger at those kiosks. They're interesting to watch, to look at. One guy called me over to one because he found some weirdness, and then I was like, I started looking up kiosk stuff. But yeah, I'm like, oh, yeah, because I want to know because they're fairly new, right?
Yeah,
they're fairly new phenomenon.
Like I said,
like in the last year.
It was crazy where I said, well, wait a minute. And they had, I went in there with my son, and so we were in there, and we ordered, and then they said, oh, you can go take a seat. And I'm like, I can go take a seat? What's going on here? Oh, we're going to, and this is really the get off my lawn moment, where they're like, oh, yeah, we'll bring it over to your table. And I'm like, huh? And I just felt like I was in a time warp or something like that. I was like, no, I usually I can stand here and wait for it.
Right, yeah, see. Yeah, it's not Boston Market, where there's it's sort of just one upscale above McDonald's, right? And then one upscale above that would be like Chili's. You know what I mean? It's like they're still fast food restaurants, but they're like one slight level above. I don't need McDonald's bringing stuff to my table. You know what I mean? It's that. I just sit me at the counter. It's changed this thing. This whole thing should take between 3 and 7 minutes at the high end, and no longer than that because it's supposed to be fast. If I have to sit at a table and wait for stuff, I want a waiter. I want somebody, and it's this. It's people have gotten silly with all this stuff. Like, it doesn't make any sense to me.
Hey, the absolute last topic I want
to
speak with you about is, are you a part of this DoorDash culture, this DoorDash Uber Eats culture, where you order a milkshake and some person is at your front door with the milkshake? And
see, that's ridiculous. See, part of the fun is making the milkshake. I mean, you don't have milkshakes every night. You make a milkshake on an occasion, right? So and by the time someone makes a milkshake and then drives it over to you, you just have milk, right? It's just this slurry of, no, the fun of the milkshake is having it be frozen. It's kind of like getting a specialty burger and then bringing it home. By the time you get your burger home, it's going to be cold and not as, you know what I mean? So I don't understand that. I mean,
but
no one cooks anymore.
No, that's we can't even touch that tonight. But
yeah,
did you see it was on the news, and the guy was delivering. It was from DoorDash. He was delivering a milkshake to someone, and decided to take a sip.
This. Yeah,
he took a sip, and then the little kid came to the door, and he was like, "Here you go." I'm like,
yeah.
Oh my God!
This is what the problem is. People are disgusting, right? And in a society where everybody thinks that they're the bomb, and it's telling people, man, this is going to be a long conversation. Part of my personal way to get around this world is I want to see you make it. So normally, 80% of the time, I go in and order it from the counter. It's rare that I don't, just because, people bringing stuff to your crib is always, you don't know who made it or when they made it. And I started doing this a couple of years back, but whenever it's flu season, I adhere to it. Because if flu's going around, I know someone at your work has the flu, right? So I'm not saying it's the chef. I'm not saying it's the hostess. I'm not saying it's the cashier, but I know someone has it. So this is why I don't, so these are all weird quirks, granted, but it keeps me healthy, right? And especially if I know that a lot of these restaurants seem to be sketchy and sketchier in hiring anybody to do it. Now I'm just more suspicious. So yeah, it's it's that milkshake thing was disgusting. I mean,
I thought that was crazy.
Yeah.
We're sitting here, and I'm like, okay, this
and
is the
and I remember the story. They were like, the father checked it. The father checked the camera. The girl mentioned it that night, and the father was like, "Oh, you're just crazy." And then he was like, "Huh?" And then he checked the camera the next day.
Yes.
And he was like, "Yeah, you were right." And I was just kind of like, "Oh my God, this is just." I mean, people are goofy. I mean,
but on top
the new
of that,
people think that working for a living is not, the move. And since it's not the move, and I have to be here, I don't really have to respect it. But here's the problem: people are ingesting this thing. You know what I'm saying? So I would have charged him I would have fired him and had him charged with assault. Because I mean,
But did you hear?
What happened?
The father sent a copy of the video to the company and hadn't heard from them. It was like 2 weeks later, and they were like, "Yeah, I still haven't heard from them."
That's outrageous. See, that right there is when you have too many PR people in the middle of just fixing it. Oh, but if we admit that is wrong, then we open ourselves up to liability. Maybe we can do this, and before you know it, they don't deal with the problem. They just sit in their own little cookery, coming up with what ifs when they could have just tried the decent approach and like, this is outrageous. I have a daughter too, and I don't want this to happen to her. That dude is fired. Here's 6 months worth of, at our shop, come in and eat at the place on us. People would be like, oh, well, they handled it nicely, and that's it. And I think most people would have been happy with that, because most people know that you're not going to get any money from court on it, right? But I think that a lot of this never gets to this point because these giant corporations deal with it poorly. Excuse me.
But whatever happened to
2 weeks? That's outrageous.
Taking your lazy self to your car, driving to the Cold Stone, picking up whatever you're going to pick up, and then going home. Whatever happened to that?
Yeah, exactly. Like, people act like every day it's a torrential downpour or 90 feet of snow. It's like it's not that big an inconvenience to get out in the world and go and pick this stuff up. But also, there seems to be, I don't know, man. It's like people do nothing but drive, right? They drive to work. They're out of the car. They may walk up to the path to their house. They chill at the house. They're on the Xbox or whatever. Then if they leave again, they walk out of the house that same small distance, hop in the car, drive to wherever, and maybe the most they'll walk around the mall. So, I mean, I am pro-moving, right? Especially as I get older. I'm seriously pro-moving. And we've gotten so comfortable with the idea of being comfortable that people don't even want to, do the base minimum to keep to shake the kinks out, as my father used to say. The idea that you just kind of like, I was talking to my nephew about running. He was like, if you can walk, you can run. And I was telling him, that's not true. He was like, if you can walk without a cane or a crutch, you can run. I was like, that's not true. It is not true. And I'm talking about a lot of people, not just heavy people. I'm talking about thin people. People have just like bad, I'm not talking about like body mechanic issues like bad knees, bad joints from like war or injuries or ailments. I'm just talking about people who've never used, who haven't run since they were 8 and now are 35. That whole being coordinated enough just to run at a decent speed down the block has to sort of be relearned. It's people really are comfortable at a place where I think it might be a bit dangerous for like all of us. If that makes sense. So
yeah, it does. Hey, I want to wrap this up, Shawn. As always, it's a pleasure. I'm gonna give you a call because, like I said, there's so many different topics to jump into. But I think I text you that DoorDash story because I was just like, well, wait a minute. Like, it's just all types of wrong. But like I said, I think about the culture. And next time we kick it, I got to tell you about. I took my first Uber.
Oh yeah,
first time ever in an Uber, and I was in Orlando, Florida, in an Uber, and just it wasn't a bad situation. It was a good situation.
Okay.
But I just noticed some of those drivers. I'm not saying all the drivers. I'm saying the two that I experienced were very negative towards their employer.
Right.
This one guy was saying to me, he said, Uber is evil. And I'm like, dude, just drive. Drive me to my location and let me get out of here. I had to put that out there. I said, dude, just drive me to the location. Whatever beef you have with the company, that's between you.
Too bad. I would have loved. What do you know about Uber? That's interesting.
But I mean, we'll delve into that, man.
Yeah.
Hey, what are the best ways to get in contact with you?
I'm on Twitter at @true_armor, and I'm on YouTube at Armor Intergalactic. Stop by, say hi.
Definitely, and I'll hit you up because I think let's try this again tomorrow or Wednesday.
Sounds good. I'm available for you always, homie.
All right, man. I'll talk to you later.
Peace.
Hi, I'm Jay Farner, CEO of Quicken Loans. 30% of
If I could just talk real quickly about how to teach children to handle emergencies without scaring them. I mean, because over this past week, really for the past week and a half, I mean, this was a media-enriched week, if you think about it. There was so much going on back and forth. Tapes were being released. Julian Assange with WikiLeaks, emails supposedly were being released. So there's a lot of that's going on. But along with it was Hurricane Matthew. And it's a touchy subject. We know that in the New York area from dealing with Sandy, prepping for it. We knew about it way in advance. So the question is, the folks in North Carolina, South Carolina, Virginia, Georgia, they were rocked. Along with after seeing the damage what this hurricane did in Haiti. So you get to the point of how do you teach your child or children to handle emergencies without scaring them? Basically without scaring the bleep out of them. Hang on 1 second. So discussing possible emergency scenarios with one's child is never a pleasant topic. Parents do not want to frighten or create new anxieties. So you have to ask that question, how to approach an emergency preparedness that won't freak your children out. You got to tell children an emergency is something unusual that happens which could hurt people or cause damage to things like your home and or your car. You got to explain to them that the nature itself sometimes provides too much of something like rain, wind, or snow. Talk about the effects of the emergency that children can relate to, such as the loss of electricity or water or telephone service, flooded roads, and uprooted trees. Explain that everyone is better able to take care of themselves in emergencies when they know what to do. So first, you teach your children the difference between a problem and an emergency. A problem is something that they need help with, but does not require emergency services. An emergency is a situation that requires immediate assistance from the police or the fire department, or requires immediate medical assistance through paramedics or EMTs. When your child experiences a problem, he or she should decide whether to call you immediately, call a neighbor, or whether the problem can wait until you get home. For example, you probably want your child to call you if he or she felt scared, had trouble getting into the house, got home and found that the electricity was off. The following issues warrant an immediate call to 911. A fire, evidence of a break-in, a medical emergency, such as someone being unresponsive or bleeding profusely. What do you have to do? The first thing you do is step one, you create that communication plan. So, all in all, you got to make sure the lines of communications are open. So you have to teach your child one parent's cell phone number or a good contact number. Starting at around age 5, children are developmentally ready to memorize a 7 or 10-digit number. Practice with your child and turn the phone number into a song like a modified version of Twinkle Twinkle Little Star. Designate an out-of-state contact. This will be a resource and a point person for your family to call. Choose a location other than your home where your family can meet. You'll need to go there in case of a fire or an earthquake or a hurricane, for example. So let's just say this. Your meeting place might be a local park or school or shelter. Walk to the site with your child so he or she knows exactly how to get there. You have to designate a trusted friend or a family member who can pick up your kid at childcare or school if you are unable to get there in a disaster situation. You got to be sure that you give official permission to release your child to that person. You got to make a card with a plan for each adult's wallet. Include contact names, your emergency location, the out-of-state contact number. Put a copy in your school-age child's backpack, and most importantly, you got to discuss this plan with your kids. You have to inform the caregivers and nearby relatives of your plan. Be sure to give a copy of your plan to your child teacher too. If you're not good at texting, you got to improve on those skills, because what we were just talking about in the last segment, it's all about millennials, and it's all about nowadays you might find yourself texting more than actually having that conversation, because that's what kids nowadays are comfortable with. And as strange as that sounds, yes, you gotta, what worked for us, or myself, I would say, I'm in my mid-40s, what worked 20, 30 years ago, it's not going to work today. You got to upgrade some of those skills. So when a cell phone signal strength goes down, texting often still works because it uses less bandwidth and network capacity. Think about it. If you look at your plan on any service that you have, there's voice and there's data. Everyone needs to know about calling 911 in an emergency. Kids also need to know the specifics about what an emergency is. Asking them questions like, what would you do if we had a fire in our house? What would you do if you saw someone trying to break in? Gives you a chance to discuss what constitutes an emergency and what to do if one occurs. Role-playing is especially a good way to address various emergency scenarios and give your kids the confidence they'll need to handle them. For younger children, it might also help to talk about who the emergency workers are in your community. And this is stuff that your children are going through, hopefully in school, if not daily, then weekly. Police officers, firefighters, paramedics, doctors, nurses, and so on. And what kinds of things what do they do to help people who are in trouble? This will clarify not only what types of emergencies can occur, but also who can help. And most importantly, when do you call 911? I think we would only call 911 when there's a specific emergency. And that's the part of the understanding, is knowing what an emergency is, knowing what is not. A fire, an intruder in the house, an unconscious family member, these are all things that require a call to 911. A skinned knee, a stolen bike, or an agreement with a schoolmate would not. Still, teach your child that if ever in doubt, there's no adult around to ask, make the call. But it's much better to be safe than sorry. We have to make sure our children understand that calling 911 is not a joke. And that's regardless what Flavor Flav has said, a few years ago. It's a crime in many places. So in some cities, officials estimate that as much as 75% of their calls made to 911 are not emergency calls. These are not all pranks. Some people accidentally push the emergency button on their cell phones. Others don't realize that 911 is for true emergencies, not for such things as a flat tire or even about a theft that occurred a few weeks ago. There's a big difference. There's 911. Within the city limits, there's 311, there's 411. Of course, on your local voice provider service, there's 611, but 911 is really strictly for emergencies. You got to work out that home evacuation plan. Now, this is a topic that my friends and I talk about in the chat room all the time. In the event of a fire or a natural disaster, your family will need to have a coordinated evacuation plan to ensure that everyone makes it out of the house safely. It's important to explain to your child that all material possessions, even the favorite ones, can be replaced, and that it's far more important for them to exit the house than to save their belongings. Make sure that he or she knows how to get out of the house if you're not able to reach her. Or make it a way to have a prearranged family meeting place, and what he or she should do if they arrive first. Discuss region-specific natural disasters. You probably won't need to waste much time on teaching a child that lives in the Midwest how to manage a hurricane, but he or she would need to know what to do in the event of a tornado. Talking about natural disasters that are most likely to occur in your area and making a specific plan to deal with them is imperative, especially if you live in a region that's particularly prone to environmental emergencies. You have to role play specific scenarios. One of the best ways to determine how much your child knows and what they need to learn about emergency preparedness is to role play, especially scenarios that, he or she could potentially encounter. That's a reason why public schools practice routine fire drills. They help children prepare in relatively low-stress environment for an emergency so that in a high-pressure situation, they know how to react. Role-playing serious injury situations, weather emergencies, and a house fire, and even potential intruder situations give you an idea about what your children knows and helps you to teach them more detailed information so that they're prepared to handle any emergency. After the emergency, there's a time for recovery. Immediately after the emergency situation, try to reduce the child's fear and anxiety. Keep the family together. So while you look for your housing and assistance, you may want to leave your children and relatives or friends. But instead, keep the family together as much as possible and make children a part of what you're doing to get the family back on its feet. Children get anxious. They'll worry that their parents won't return. Explain what will happen next. For example, say, tonight we will all stay together in the shelter. You have to emphasize, get down to the child's eye level and talk to them. You have to encourage children to talk. Let children talk about emergencies and ask questions as much as they want. Encourage children to describe what they're feeling. Listen to what they say. If possible, include the entire family in the discussion. Most importantly, include children in recovery activities. Give children chores that are their responsibility. This will help children feel, that they're part of the recovery. having a task that will help them understanding that everything will be all right. I mean, that's overall. I want to thank our friends at comprehendthemind.com on how to teach children how to handle emergencies without scaring them. We'll be posting this article on Late Night Parents because it is so important in this, in this day and age that we're dealing with. I'm not sure where to begin with that because, it's a very serious situation. I mean, I remember the specific times, like, in the Northeast, we're not used to it, but, for those folks that are living in Florida, this is the norm. This is the norm for those folks that are in South Carolina and North Carolina, and even in, certain parts of Virginia where you have to prepare yourself. So with that, we're going to go to our next break, and we'll come back real briefly with Dr. Michelle.